Welcome back to another episode of Silent Pals Go to the Movies. I'm here with my friend Touly. Say hi, Touly.
Hi, guys.
And today we're going to be talking about Bad Boys for Life. And just fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. The Bad Boys, Mike and Laurie and Marcus Burnett, are back. And they're facing another threat, a killer who's targeting Mike. Will they get the killer, or will the killer kill everybody who Mike cares about? And just for the people who are listening, if you want to find out more information about this movie, click on the link below and let's get the review started. So I'm going to start off with my pros and then I'm going to move on to my cons. One of my pros was that this movie had the nostalgia factor since we've seen the other ones and they were from 1995 and 2003. So this one spanned a gap of 17 years. So all the fans from the other movies, when they heard about this, were just right on board. It was this whole, I grew up with this movie and I want to see the new one. And people were thinking this is going to be the last chapter. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So this movie had that going for it. The other thing is that there was a bunch of little Easter eggs from the previous movies. If people are not familiar with the other movies, if you see them and then you see this one, you will catch them. They're not really put there so to elaborate them. They're just put there for people who are fans, and these are small Easter eggs. One example is when they're in the church almost at the end. We see a bunch of rats scattered through the ground. This is a throwback to one of the previous movies where they showed two rats getting kind of intimate. In this movie, we didn't see them getting intimate. We just saw them pass by. So this is one of those things that like, oh, it's a throwback. Next thing is the cast in this movie was amazing since they were in other films back in the day and they just come back to reprise their roles. I really enjoyed how the captain acted and his humor and his way of kind of accepting and taking all the bad things with his foul mouth attitude. That was really enjoyable. He did die in the middle of the movie, which kind of to me it added a little more character to Mike because we saw how close these two characters were, even though they really didn't show it that much. They were always talking about like, I got your back, but at that scene it really kind of brought it home and it made Mike a more down-to-earth human being before he was this untouchable character. Next thing is the comedy. The comedy was there and we have different characters who added to it. Mike, which was played by Will Smith, he had his humor, he had his charisma and everything, and other characters had their humor. The one that I'm going to talk about later in my cons is Marcus or Martin. We'll touch upon that when I get there. Next pro is it's also going to be a con. There is no Michael Bay in this movie. He did not direct it or produce it. He was not involved in it, except that he had a small cameo in the movie. Now I'm going from there to my cons. I'm not saying that he's not going to be in the movie anymore, is that he just got announced that he's going to be producing the next movie, Bad Boys 4. And to me, I really think this is going to be a negative because I don't want this movie to be taken from what we know and then you add Michael Bay back into the role and he's going to make Bad Boys meets Fast and the Furious. And then I'm not talking about the good Fast and the Furious movies. I'm talking about the really, really bad ones where they jump off with cars off planes and they land and they still have the cars functioning properly. Those are the kind of movies that I don't want to see. And I don't want Bad Boys to go that route as it was in the other films. We had really action scenes that were kind of far-fetched. So I really don't want that to go that way. Another one of my cons, some of the scenes again with Martin or Marcus seemed like he was trying too hard to get to the joke instead of him trying to be this good person in the movie, not by not cursing or anything. I would actually really have liked it if when him and Mike are arguing, he starts cursing and then at the same time he will just probably be like, oh, sorry God, you know, like in this movie he was trying to turn a new leaf. But to me, if he's trying to do that at the same time, he can be foul-mouthed with Mike and at the same time Alan be like, oh, I'm sorry, Lord, you know, sorry, forgive me, you know, blah, blah. That'd be another little kind of fun comedy skit that he can play. Another thing, what is this phrase, hasta el fuego? I know that Mike touched upon it and he said it doesn't mean anything. It was just something that him and Isabella would say to each other. But at the same time, is if it doesn't mean anything, why can't you come up with the phrase that only they would know? And it has a deeper meaning. Also, in the scene, in the jailbreak scene, the guard was talking and over the loudspeaker, it was really horrible Spanish and just hearing it made me cringe. I just imagine that there must be somebody on set who says, hey, that's Spanish. That's not how you say that in Spanish. Or, you know, let's correct these lines a little bit, you know, like make it sound believable. Of course, this is Hollywood. They don't care about stuff like this. But when you have people in the audience that knows the language, and this goes for any film, it takes you out of the film. Another one is that for the ending credits, it shows Mike go back to the cell and there's a person in there, and I think this is going to be spoilers, but I already told you about that. Warning, it's his son. Apparently he's giving him a mission. So this whole aspect of it morphing from just being bad boys to main characters to adding a third one, I really don't know how to feel about that, and I don't know what route is going to go in. Maybe if somehow they played on Marcus being kidnapped or his wife, and they needed to recruit Mike's son in order to get access to his underground network of, mafia cartel people, then I would be on board with that. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to my friend Touly and see how he saw this movie and his grade.
So one of the concerns I had with this film going into it sort of falls in line with how I felt about other movies where they're trying to reboot the series or just for, another film for the series. So I was a little concerned about that because for the original Bad Boy movies that came out in the 90s, I wouldn't say I loved them. I mean, I was okay with them. I guess it was more of like a nostalgic factor, in particular with the actors that are in this film. Sal already alluded to them. And because of that, I feel like I went into watching Bad Boys for Life mostly because of the actors initially. Of course, Will Smith, who I grew up watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and many of the movies that he was in after the show. Martin Lawrence, again, I came to know of him based on his TV sitcom Martin. Just, knowing that these guys were in the movie, let alone a reboot of the Bad Boys series here, that to me was enough for me to get me to go watch it. Now, my concern is not being too huge of a fan of the original Bad Boys film. Again, I was okay with them. I didn't know where they were going to take this because, again, it's been years since the originals. I didn't want to set my expectations too high, which kind of helped because I think in the end, I ended up liking the movie a lot more than I would have. Just because for the absurdity that was in the film, the over-the-top, action-packed scenes. Sal mentioned the comedy, which for the most part worked for me. Yeah, there were stuff that were kind of forced. Maybe it was a little too much at times when they could have just settled back and let whatever was happening on screen just do the talking per se. Yeah, I mean, I found a lot of stuff humorous. I was pretty much wanting to know what was going to happen next. And there were actually a couple scenes that took me by surprise. There were scenes that were quite violent, or should I say more violent than I was going to expect for this film. But I appreciate it because it kind of threw me off guard. And when I saw it happen, I was like, oh, wow, okay. I didn't see that coming. In particular, when they, again, spoiler alert, when they killed off the captain, played by Joe Pantoliano. I'm a fan with it because I initially saw him. I mean, much to what I was talking about, Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, I initially came to know Joe from Memento. I believe he played the character Teddy in that, which is another film that Sal and I reviewed in one of his throwback films. So yeah, I mean, when he got killed off, I was kind of taken back. I was like, oh man, so this is how they're gonna try to convince Martin Lawrence's character Marcus to sort of get back into the whole groove of thing and take down this evil that Mike was already trying to do so, to begin with. So yeah, that definitely added motivation, which I totally bought into. And like I said, it was very action-packed. And if you were just to look at the film from that perspective, you wanted to go watch a film that was just filled with action, comedy, over-the-top nonsense, then I would say I would recommend this film just for that. But in terms of the story, though, again, it's pretty standard, nothing too special, but I would say that that's the aspect of the film that I would be a little more critical of. Don't expect anything that would amaze you in terms of its storytelling. Some people might be able to overlook it, but for me, I actually didn't like what they did at the end. What happened between Will Smith and his son. I mean, I guess I'll sort of end my review here by saying the movie is called Bad Boys for Life. Given what the son had did up to his point, which led him to be held captive in prison, I thought for what he did, he should have been in prison for life. Instead, here comes Will Smith's character, Mike, offering him a way to reduce his prison sentence in exchange for his service. To me, that didn't work because maybe it's the movie's attempt at, again, foreshadowing the next movie of Bad Boys. It's a foreshadowing of redemption for Mike's son. But to me, again, given what I saw throughout the film, what Mike's son had did, I needed him not to be able to be given this opportunity. He needed to be remorseful. He needed the sort of punishment to equate to the crimes that he has performed. And I thought with what Mike offered him at the end was sort of a free out of jail card. And that didn't really sit well with me. And again, this just adds on top of already a standard plot line that's been laid out. So to me, I kind of deducted, a point really, like a whole point just because of that particular scene at the end. And it wasn't even that long. It was just like a brief moment. But again, I thought they should have just not included that at all. Overall, I still like the film. I would recommend it just based on the premise of it being over the top, action packed with comedy. And my overall score of the film is a 7.5 out of 10.
Okay, so my grade for this movie, I deducted a few points. One, because Michael Bay is going to be in the next movie. He's going to be a producer. That didn't sit well with me. The other thing is the ending, like Touly said. It really rubbed me the wrong way that Mike is going in, setting up Bad Boys 4 by asking his son to come on a mission. If they would approach it differently, let's say if it's not Mike, Marcus comes in and says, hey, someone took your dad. I need you to help me. Now, I would be on board with that. That shows that the character is going to get his shot at redemption, like Touly said, versus, hey, you just want to reduce your sentence, like Touly said, get out of jail for free. Or what if Mike goes in and says, I need you to help me because Marcus is missing and I believe it's cartel. Now, that's another setup for redemption. So they didn't do that in a sense. Maybe they might do that because they didn't reveal what the mission is. We only saw one character. We didn't see the other partner. But for me, because of that, this movie gets an easy 7 out of 10, but I do highly recommend to go watch it. If you've seen the other ones, the nostalgia factor is there. You can enjoy it. And so that does it for this review of Bad Boys for Life. Please join us next time when we are going to review Gretel and Hansel.
Pleased to make your acquaintance. I'm called Gretel, and this rough one here is my brother Hansel.
Please like, comment, and subscribe. You can find our social media links below. And like always, keep watching movies.